and wrote books in their autobiographies about the shit. All right.
The thing about the Jekyll Island thing, what else adds into that? The fucking Titanic, bro. One of the biggest movies to ever come in history. Most of the people, like 90% of the opposition to America going on to the Fed and having private banking like that, they were on that Titanic. We probably watched their counterparts in the video.
Executive Order 13,933 of June 26, 2020 protecting American monuments, memorials, and statues and combating recent criminal violence by the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1. Purpose. The first duty of government is to ensure domestic tranquility and defend the life, property, and rights of its citizens. Over the last 5 weeks, property, and revered American monuments such as the Lincoln Memorial. Many of the rioters, arsonists, and left-wing extremists who have carried out and supported these acts explicitly identified themselves with ideologies such as Marxism, that call for the destruction of the United States system of government. Anarchists and left-wing extremists have sought to advance a fringe ideology that paints the United States of America as fundamentally unjust and have sought to impose that ideology on Americans through violence and mob intimidation. They have led riots in the streets, burned police vehicles, killed and assaulted government officers as well as business owners defending their property, and even seized an area within one city where law and order gave way to anarchy. During the unrest, innocent citizens also have been harmed and killed. These criminal acts are frequently planned and supported by agitators who have traveled across state lines to promote their own violent agenda. These radicals shamelessly attack key targets in the violent extremist campaign against our country are public monuments, memorials, and statues. Their selection of targets reveals a deep ignorance of our history, and is indicative of a desire to indiscriminately destroy anything that honors our past and to erase from the public mind any suggestion that our past may be worth honoring, cherishing, remembering, or understanding. In the last week, vandals toppled a statue of President Ulysses S. Grant in San Francisco. To them, it made no difference that President Grant led the Union Army to victory over the Confederacy in the Civil War, enforced Reconstruction, fought the Ku Klux Klan, and advocated for the 15th Amendment, which guaranteed freed slaves the right to vote. In Charlotte, Carolina, the names of 507 veterans memorialized on a World War II monument were painted over with a symbol of communism. And earlier this month, in Boston, a memorial commemorating an African-American regiment that fought in the Civil War was defaced with graffiti. In Madison, Wisconsin, rioters knocked over the statue of an abolitionist immigrant who fought for the Union during the Civil War. Christian figures are now in the crosshairs, too. Activist for one movement that has been prominent in setting the agenda for demonstrations in recent worship. Individuals and organizations have the right to peacefully advocate for either the removal or the construction of any monument, but no individual or group has the right to damage, Verdate Sep 11-2014, 21-48 July 1, 2020 JKT 250,250 PO 00000 FRM 00003 FMT 4705 SFMT 4790 /FR /FM /02 JY0.SGM 02 JY0 Camondon DSKJN 1Z7X2 Prod with Prestock 40,082 Federal Register, Volume 85, Number 128, Thursday, July 2, 2020. Presidential documents. In the midst of these attacks, many state and local governments appear to have lost the ability to distinguish between the lawful exercise of rights to free speech and assembly and unvarnished vandalism. They have surrendered to mob rule, imperiling community safety, allowing for the wholesale violation of our laws, and privileging the violent impulses of the mob over the rights of law-abiding citizens. Worse, they apparently have lost the will or the desire to stand up to the radical fringe and defend that justice prevails in this country to a far greater extent than anywhere else in the world. Some particularly misguided public officials even appear to have accepted the idea that violence can be virtuous and have prevented their police from enforcing the law and protecting public monuments, memorials, and statues from the mob's ropes and graffiti. My administration will not allow violent mobs incited by radical fringe to become the arbiters of the aspects of our history that can be celebrated in public spaces. State and local public officials' abdication of their law enforcement responsibilities in deference to this violent assault must end. Sec. 2. Policy. A. It is the policy of the United States to prosecute to the fullest extent permitted under federal law, and as appropriate, any person or any entity that destroys, damages, vandalizes, or desecrates a monument, memorial, within the United States or otherwise vandalizes government property. The desire of the Congress to protect federal property is clearly reflected in Section 1361 of Title 18, United States Code, which authorizes a penalty of up to 10 years imprisonment for the willful injury of federal property. More recently, under the Veterans Memorial Preservation and Recognition Act of 2003, Section Code penalties the destruction of federal and in some cases state-maintained monuments. Other criminal statutes, such as the Travel Act, Section 1952 of Title 18, United States Code, permit prosecutions of arson-damaging monuments, memorials, and statues on state grounds in some cases. Civil statutes like the Public System Resource Protection Act, Section 100,722, Title 54, United States Code, also hold those who destroy certain federal property accountable for their offenses. The federal government will not tolerate violations of these and other laws. B. It is the policy of the United States to prosecute to the fullest extent permitted under federal law, and as appropriate, any person or any entity that participates in efforts to incite violence or other illegal activity in connection with the riots and acts of vandalism described in Section 1 of this order. Numerous federal laws, including Section 2101 of Title 18, United States Code, prohibit the violence that has typified the past few weeks in some cities. Other statutes punish those who participate in or assist the agitators who have coordinated these lawless acts. Such laws include Section 371 of Title 18, United States Code, which criminalizes certain conspiracies to violate federal law, Section 2 of Title 18, United States Code, which punishes those who aid or abet the commission of federal crimes, and Section 2339A of Title 18, United States Code, which prohibits as material those who joined the C. It is the policy of the United States to prosecute to the fullest extent permitted under federal law, and as appropriate, any person or any entity that damages, defaces, or destroys religious property, including by attacking, removing, or defacing depictions of Jesus or other religious figures or religious artwork. Federal laws prohibit, under certain circumstances, damage or defacement of religious property, including the Church Arson Prevention Act of 1996, Section 247 of Title 18, United States Code, and Section 371 of Title 18, United States Code. The federal government will not tolerate violations of these laws designed to protect the free exercise of religion. D. It is the policy of the United States, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law, to withhold federal support tied to public spaces from state and local governments that have failed to protect public monuments, memorials, and statues from destruction or vandalism. These jurisdictions' recent abandonment of their law enforcement responsibilities with respect to public monuments, memorials, and statues cast doubt on their willingness to protect other public spaces and maintain the peace within them. These jurisdictions if applicable law, to withhold federal support from state and local law enforcement agencies that have failed to protect public monuments, memorials, and statues from destruction or vandalism. Unwillingness to enforce state and local laws in the face of attacks on our history, whether because of sympathy for the extremists behind this violence or some other improper reason, cast doubt on the management of these law enforcement agencies. These are not appropriate candidates for limited federal funds that support state and local police. Sec. 3. Enforcing laws prohibiting the desecration of public monuments, the vandalism of government property, and recent acts of violence. A. The Attorney General shall prioritize within the Department of Justice the investigation and prosecution of matters described in subsections 2A, B, and C of this order. The Attorney General shall take all appropriate enforcement action against individuals and organizations found to have violated federal law through these investigations. B. The Attorney General shall, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law, work with state and local law enforcement authorities and federal agencies to ensure the federal government appropriately provide information and assistance for the desecration of monuments, memorials, and statues, regardless of whether such structures are situated on federal property. Sec. 4. For jurisdictions and law enforcement agencies that permit of monuments, memorials, or statues. The heads of all executive departments and agencies shall examine programs and apply the policies established by sections 2D and E of this order to all such programs, extent that such application is both appropriate and consistent with applicable law. Sec. 5. Providing assistance for the protection of federal monuments, memorials, statues, and property. Upon the request of the Secretary of the Interior, the Secretary of Homeland Security, or the Administrator of General Services, the Secretary of Defense, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of Homeland Security shall provide, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law, personnel to assist with the protection of federal monuments, memorials, statues, or property. This section shall terminate 6 months from the date of this order unless extended by the President. Sec. 6. General provisions. A. Nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect the authority granted by law to an executive department or agency, or the head thereof, or 2. The functions of the Director of the Office of Management and Budget relating to budgetary, administrative, or legislative proposals. B. This order shall be implemented consistent with applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations. C. This order is not intended to, and does not, create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States, its departments, agencies, or its officers, employees, or agents, or any other person. D. This order is not intended to, and does not, affect the prosecutorial discretion of the Department of Justice with respect to individual cases. Executive Order 13,934 of July 3, 2020, building and rebuilding monuments to American heroes by the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1. Purpose. America owes its present greatness to its past sacrifices. Because the past is always at risk of being forgotten, monuments will always be needed to honor those who came before. Since the time of our founding, Americans have raised monuments to our greatest citizens. In 1784, the legislature of Virginia commissioned the earliest statue of George Washington, a monument of affection and gratitude to a man who, Unit ed. To the endowment of the hero the virtues of the patriot and gave to the world an immortal example of true glory. Iris. H. Dell. June 24, 1784. In our public parks and plazas, we have erected statues of great Americans who, through acts of wisdom and daring, built and preserved for us a republic of ordered liberty. These statues are silent teachers in solid form of stone and metal. They preserve the memory of our American story and stir in us a spirit of responsibility for the chapters yet unwritten. These works of art call forth gratitude for the accomplishments and sacrifices of our exceptional fellow citizens who, despite their flaws, placed their virtues, their talents, and their lives in the service of our nation. These monuments express our noblest ideals: respect for our ancestors, love of freedom, and striving for a more. They are works of beauty, created as enduring tributes. In preserving them, we show reverence for our past, we dignify our present, and we inspire those who are to come. To build a monument is to ratify our shared national project. To destroy a monument is to desecrate our common inheritance. In recent weeks, in the midst of protests across America, many monuments have been vandalized or destroyed. Some local governments have responded by taking their monuments down. Among others, monuments to Christopher Columbus, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Francis Scott Key, Ulysses S. Grant, leaders of the abolitionist movement, the first all-volunteer African-American regiment of the Union Army in the Civil War, and American soldiers killed in the First and Second World Wars have been vandalized, destroyed, moved, to be discarded at the whim of those inflamed by fashionable political passions. They belong to generations that have come before us and to generations yet unborn. My administration will on our collective national memory. In the face of such acts of destruction, it is our responsibility as Americans to stand strong against this violence. and to peacefully transmit our great national story to future generations through newly commissioned monuments to American heroes. Sec. 2. Task Force for Building and Rebuilding Monuments to American Heroes. A. There is hereby established the Interagency Task Force for Building and Rebuilding Monuments to American Heroes, Task Force. The task force shall be chaired by the Secretary of the Interior, Secretary, and shall include the following additional members: I. The Administrator of General Services, Administrator; 2. The Chairperson of the National Endowment for the Arts, NEA. 3. The Chairperson of the National Endowment for the Humanities, NEH, IV. The Chairman of the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, ACHP, and V. Any officers or employees of any executive department or agency designated by the President or the Secretary. B. The Department of the Interior shall provide funding and administrative support. The Secretary shall designate an official of the Department of Executive Director of the Task Force, responsible for coordinating its day-to-day activities. C. The chairpersons of the NEA and NEH and the chairman of the ACHP shall establish cross-department initiatives within the NEA, NEH, and ACHP, respectively, to advance the purposes of the task force and this order and to coordinate relevant agency operations with the task force. Sec. 3. National Garden of American Heroes. A. It shall be the policy of the United States to establish a statuary park named the National Garden of American Heroes, National Garden. B. Within 60 days of the date of this order, the task force shall submit a report to the President through the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy that proposes options for the creation of the National Garden, including potential locations for the site. In identifying options, the task force shall, I. Strive to open the National Garden expeditiously, 2. Evaluate the feasibility of creating the National Garden through a variety of potential avenues, including existing agency authorities and appropriations, and 3. Consider the availability of authority to encourage and accept the donation or loan of statues by states, localities, civic organizations, businesses, religious organizations, and individuals. For display at the National Garden. Proposed options for the National Garden should adhere to the criteria described in subsections C I through C vi of this section. I. The National Garden should be composed of statues, including statues of John Adams, Susan B. Anthony, Clara Barton, Daniel Boone, Benjamin Franklin, Billy Graham, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, Martin Luther King, Jr., Abraham Lincoln, Douglas MacArthur, Dolly Madison, James Madison, Christa McAuliffe, Audie Murphy, George S. Patton, Jr., Ronald Reagan, Jackie Robinson, Betsy Ross, Antonin Scalia, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Harriet Tubman, Booker T. Washington, George Washington, and Norville and Wilbur Wright. 2. The National Garden should be accessed prior to the 250th anniversary of the proclamation of the Declaration of Independence on July 4, 2026.
Fucking treasonous pieces of shit!
I know! They really destroying our city!
City, and it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that?
It makes me teary-eyed. I'm just yeah, because if it was us, Black Lives Matter, we couldn't even do none of that. And we died. I know! They really destroying our city!
Destroying the fucking city, and it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that? Nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that? If Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers, if that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that? And it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down. And it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that?
It makes me teary-eyed. I'm just
And it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that?
It makes me teary-eyed. I'm just
City, and it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that?
It makes me teary-eyed. I'm just
And it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that?
It makes me teary-eyed. I'm just
And it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that?
It makes me teary-eyed. I'm just
And it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that?
It makes me teary-eyed. I'm just
And it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that?
It makes me teary-eyed. I'm just
And it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that?
It makes me teary-eyed. I'm just
And it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives Matter, they got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol.
That's true.
What the fuck is that?
It makes me teary-eyed. I'm just
And it's like nobody gives a shit. If that was Black Lives And it's like nobody gives a shit. Next hour's Black Lives Matter. They got tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue. But they let these fucking crackers take over the goddamn Capitol. That's true. What the fuck is that?
It makes me teary-eyed. I'm just
Catch me in the Lord's house, singing with the Christians, praising Jesus Christ, cause we know that we forgiven. The Lord spoke to me last night in the vision. He said, Abby, for you song, let the world know I'm risen. Welcome to the Lord's house. 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 Welcome to the Lord's house, and here you'll find the living. Lift the holy hands up with prayer and petition. Bring our request to God, lift it up in thanksgiving. Praising Jesus Christ, cause the Holy One is risen. The Lord is compassionate, also He's miraculous. Creator of the heavens and the earth, He's so fabulous. The Lord Jesus lives, let His name be exalted. The one true God, and He's the only God that's flawless. But the Lord is my fortress, the rock where I'm hiding. And when I come out, it's His hand that is guiding. I'm praising my Savior, in His name I'm rising. Been patient, waiting for God's perfect timing, and even in darkness my light is still shining. Full armor of God on, in His name I'm riding. So as long as God is for me, no one can be against me. He don't wanna go against me. Catch me in the Lord's house, singing with the Christians, praising Jesus Christ, cause we know that we forgiven. The Lord spoke to me last night in the vision. He said, Abby, for you song, let the world know I'm risen. Welcome to the Lord's house. 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 The Lord is my shepherd, I have all that I need. I gotta thank Jesus cause He took one for the team. I'm covered in His blood, now the Lord has set me free. And royalty is His, so I'm dropping to my knees. The Lord is majestic, powerful and glorious. The Lord of heaven armies, His name is so victorious. The God of my salvation, and ain't no other savior. The King of all kings, since a baby in a manger. And with all of my heart I'll be praising the King. He alone is my refuge, right under His wings. The Lord is so famous, His name really rings. He died for our sins, and yes, that's why we sing. He gave us His light, we shine bright, yes, we bling. All honor and glory, it goes to the King. And as long as God is for me, no one can be against me. They don't want to go against me. Catch me in the Lord's house, singing with the Christians, praising Jesus Christ, cause we know that we're forgiven. The Lord spoke to me last night in the vision. He said, Abby, do the song.